All righty, howdy, howdy, howdy. My name is Louis Herms. This is Screw Big Gov News, Views, and Conspiracy. And that song is because our guest requested it as her favorite song. It is an amazing song, got us rocking. You know, the really cool things, I'm not going to tell you who she is right yet, but I can tell you that in the background, she was rocking it. She probably doesn't know I was watching, but I was. It was awesome. Folks, while you're here, please like, follow, share. Please do that because you guess what? They jack us around on the algorithms. We know that by now. So how do we combat them? Is we have to double up ourselves. Before we get started, I'd like to big a big thank you to our sponsor, Verity Metals at veritymetals.com. And the phone number to get a hold of Matt, which he will call you back. He's an amazing guy. 480-717-9087. And if you have IRAs, you can flip them over. If you just want to get hard silver, gold in your hands, he'll give you a great rate and get you the right stuff. And I know he specializes in coins because he believes they hold their value. So without further ado, let's bring on our amazing guest, Casey Sunshine.
How are you today?
Amazing. Casey, how are you doing?
Awesome. I still have that song in my head.
Yeah,
Black velvet and that little boy's smile.
awesome. Okay, well, I'm just going to let you sing the whole thing and then we'll be done for today. Great job.
I remember the day that they announced the
That's awesome. So you have a special attachment towards Elvis
yes.
throughout your career?
Yeah, I grew up. My mom was a professional singer. My background is really that my mom, as a youth at 16, went to Hollywood to become rich and famous. She ended up having my brother when she was 18, had me when she was 19. She did not want to be a mom. She wanted to be a rich and famous singer. So she abandoned my brother and I. We ended up being subjected to foster families. My mother would sweep in and take us on the road, and we started singing as the kind of like the Partridge Family when we were like 7 and 8 years old. She worked for the Kansas City Mafia, the Savella family specifically. And so she was kind of like stuck between what I think is the Luciferian Hollywood and then the Savella crime family. I think they were actually competing with the corrupt government. Because if you remember, back in the 70s, they arrested all the crime families. They got Nick Savilla, who was my godfather's godfather. And so I was betrothed to the son of Carmen Sevilla, otherwise known as Butch Sevilla, whose dad or godfather attended Frank Sinatra's daughter's wedding. It's been actually declassified in an FBI report now that then he was invited, Nick Sevilla invited him to Carmen Sevilla's wedding when he got married to my godmother, Barbara Mantilla, and he was in attendance. So there's a declassified FBI report that proves that Frank Sinatra, who sang My Way at the Muscular Dystrophy telethons in Las Vegas with me there singing I Don't Know How to Love Him, a love song to Jesus, trying to figure out how to seduce Jesus as a little girl dressed up like a hooker.
Wow.
Yeah, so 7, 8 years old, I was fondled and French kissed by Dean Martin, and he was drunk sun up to sundown. And I used to, 7, 8 years old, I'd come back to Kansas City and tell people that Dean Martin was a drunk and that my encounters with the rich and famous were not as expected, and nobody believed me. And now there's this beautiful declassified report. My mom was singing My Way with Frank Sinatra, who was she was only 30 something and he was way too old for her. I remember as a child thinking, what's he doing being so intimate with my mom? Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's known for that. And now it's been proven that Frank Sinatra, Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. were in cahoots with the Rat Pack, Satanists, Aleister Crowley, and Anton LaVey.
Amazing. So what's the connection between the Kansas City mob and the Rat Pack? Is it just them saving you from them, or were they connected to them?
Yeah, they totally saved me from them. That's why, I spent you could say that our family, that we would be in the classification of targeted individuals. I was identified in kindergarten, first, second grade as having very high IQ, being talented vocally, and being able to dance. That put me on the fast track. I had a rare eye condition called central heterochromia, and on my Twitter page you'll see a close up of it. I was L'Oreal tried to capture what I pretty much owned pictures of my retina because I have 4 different colors. So I have this 1% of the population eye condition called central heterochromia, where both eyes are 4 distinct separate colors. And my mafia family called them angel eyes, and so did Hollywood. So that's something that they all had in common. So again, I believe that the government was managing Hollywood, and that was disclosed in this declassified FBI report. Over 1,000 pages, the FBI tracking anything and everything Frank Sinatra did. He was definitely an asset. And his job appeared to be to bring in the Italian mafia and the Jewish mafias into the Hollywood circles where they could be surveilled, controlled, and blackmailed. And so over the years, what I've discovered is that when my mother would have a nervous breakdown every 9 or 12 months, she was going in for reprogramming. She was MK Ultra. And my brother openly worships Satan. He's got an award-winning atheist podcast. He's been a professional comedian for 39 years. Used to be best friends with George Carlin before they took him out. And he can get my kids, my 5 adult children, front row seats to Jimmy Kimmel, so they think he's real cool.
Exactly.
But the Luciferian agenda is definitely not my thing. It's not my shtick. I'm a born-again Christian, and having dealt that many of them are possessed by entities from other dimensions. And so that's why I so believe in interdimensional spiritual beings, in contrast to Carrie Cassidy, who believes that they're interdimensional alien beings. And I think the demons got control of the so-called aliens by creating hybrids of various carbon-based entities, splicing them together underground in these submarines, you name it, underground military bases. Because one of the things that they all have in common is close ties to the military, the Freemasons. So I performed throughout my childhood in Freemason lodges, Blue lodges, Moose lodges, Elks lodges. And that's where a lot of these rich and famous people were groping and French kissing me. So my mother was, I believe, I was being programmed to be a mafia wife. And in that programming, my boyfriend, who was the mafia's son, my godfather's son, he was my boyfriend 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. And it was just understood that we were to be married. And I was being conditioned to accept that he would have multiple women, but that I would be his most important love. And they even exposed me to him having loves on the side when I was in 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade.
Wow.
But my mafia godfather, I love without question, because I believe he was going against the corrupt government, that they came here from Italy because they realized that the Vatican II was totally captured and that the people of Italy were being unfairly treated, and they came here to compete. So the crime families, in my view, were established as competition because everybody was bought and paid by a corrupt government. So they're like, okay, let's play that game. And for many, many years, they played along. So the Kansas City Mafia is well known. There's been many books written that they cooperated with Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Kansas City, Nebraska, and that they were very well cooperated with the governments. In fact, I was emancipated as an adult by letters of recommendation that my godfather, Carmen Sevilla, elicited from the chief of police and the chief of fire in Kansas City. So
Wow.
at 17, I'd been abandoned by all parents, but I got picked up on a bench warrant for not paying tickets on my car, and they couldn't release me because I had no adult in the state. My dad was in California. My mom was up in the New York area, Connecticut suburb. And she made a call to Butch, and I was out the next morning with these letters of recommendation. I was a straight A student, which was true. But to be able to contact the chief of police and chief of fire for your goddaughter when you're a known crime family, that was that was proof to me looking back on it. So I can tell you this, that my mafia family, when I came under their protection.
Interesting. So I'm going to go to a couple things that you did, but I found your picture of your eye, so
Yeah.
I'd like to show that. It's very cool. And here we go. Takes me just a second here, guys. There we go. That's incredible. So you actually have four different colors
Yeah.
in
It's
your eye. So I mean, but the colors that eyes have, you have the brown, you have the blue, the green, and a little yellow. Is that right?
Yeah, and it stays that way. It doesn't matter what color or what the lighting is. I have that burst of dark brown, and then there's the yellow burst behind it, and then there's very, very green. And as I get older, the outer blue rings get darker and darker. I've had people, if my eyes are dilated, I've had people say that my eyes are blue, and I'm like, no. But as a child, I recognized that I was being targeted, and they were completely captivated by this eye condition that only 1% of the human population on planet Earth has. But ironically, it's all over Hollywood. All over
Oh,
Hollywood.
is it really? So what is the attraction to that? Is there so is it happen to be that people that have this eye condition actually there's something else going on with them, like extra talent or so on and so forth? What do you think that is?
Well, the science of it, even an eye specialist, I don't want to misquote what they're called, ophthalmologist or whatever, they will tell you that you have four cones. You have extra cones that pick up different frequencies. So ever since I was a little girl, I can see other dimensions. I can see demonic entities. I can see people being influenced by demonic entities. I can see angelic and, spiritual essences. And I have a knowing because I have these extra cones that pick up different frequencies. I was just foreplay, and my brother was being sodomized from age 7 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So your story is incredible. Now, it this seems like they can target a person like you due to the fact all they have to do is look at their eyes and they already know that's probably somebody that they want to target. So you say there's an overwhelming percentage of talented people in Hollywood that have the same eye condition. Is that right?
Very, very high. It's shocking. In fact, the Imagination podcasts, Emma, she did a 3 hour interview, my whole story, start to finish, and incorporated a lot of the Disney actors and Hollywood stars that have the central heterochromia. It's just it for 1% of the world population. It's shocking how many people are made it into Hollywood. So of course, I grew up in Hollywood. People would say, "Wait, you weren't in Hollywood?" I was at Hollywood gigs all over the country,
Mhm.
actually. Really high end hotels, all these Freemason lodges. So when people say, "Oh, the Freemasons are good," I'm like, let me tell you something. The families, and you could even count me in that. I was the family. I was there for the great events, all of these philanthropic events. I went out and collected money for the muscular dystrophy telethon. And then somehow my mom was subjected to all these medical testings, and I ended up with 5 sons with Emery Dreyfus muscular dystrophy that was supposedly only 200 families in the world have it. My last name is Emery, Emery. My brother's name is Emery. And Dr. Emery discovered this disease that's not in my genetics, and it's mathematically impossible that all 5 of my sons, I've had 5 pregnancies, no miscarriages, no abortions, and I'm a carrier of Emery Dreyfus muscular dystrophy, that all 5 of my kids inherited that X chromosome. The chances of that happening are 1 in 1,024, which is even lower than my central heterochromia. And people would say, "Okay, Casey," I had someone who loves me, actually somebody in my family, who say, "Okay, hate God because you can do whatever you want and have as many orgasms as you want." That's my brother's agenda. Whereas corporate America, that I followed into, started in my field. I've been an actuary for 27 years and owning my own business. So I stepped out of that, walked away from Hollywood entirely, seeing only for my own enjoyment of these days. And I have been an actuary. I used to be a stockbroker. I was targeted by Merrill Lynch and Dean Witter, who tried to get me to violate federal law and put myself in a place where I could go to federal prison. I was targeted by the Casablancas modeling agency. who tried to get me to traffic myself to the executives of L'Oreal and Helene Curtis in order to be, for my eyes to be on the billboard identifying myself as the L'Oreal girl with their mascara and my central heterochromia eyes. And so they told me I was going to be rich and famous. John left him in the middle of my supposedly trying to entertain them. And Casablancas fired me for offending their two biggest customers and told me that they owned my likeness and all of the pictures that they took up close and personal of my eyeballs. So when people say, don't put your retina on the internet, I'm like, it's already there.
So, Casey, have you noticed? I mean, other than the symbolism, which I see in Freemasonry, have you ever noticed that their lodges are just darker, physically darker places than other places that you have performed in? Like
Oh,
you,
absolutely. I could
it's
tell you, I've been in them. I'll tell you what happens is
crazy.
the entrances are upstairs
Hmm.
and everything happens downstairs and there's no windows. And I used to think that, in fact, that, that's just for good sound effect because my mom's performing live in these lodges.
Hmm.
But I've been to many lodges, and the lodge itself is at ground level, and there's almost no windows. And then there's all these underground, these huge, gorgeous stairways into these beautiful, elaborate downstairs and multiple stories. And I remember having pictures, like I'd spend all day at the beauty parlor, and then we'd be on these huge, wide staircases where you could stack like 15 people across on one stair. That's how big the staircase is down into these, 3 stories down into the vents where there's just literally hundreds and hundreds of rich and famous people, like 12, 15 people per table. So I perform live, dressed like a hooker, singing, I don't know how to love him, what to do, how to move him. He's a man, he's just a man. And I've had so many men before in very many ways. He's just one more. It's a little girl.
I know. So the complete grooming, it's just crazy, crazy.
And then after I'd sing that song, they'd have me go table to table and let these people French kiss me, hold me on their lap. I had to entertain them and make sure that they were enjoying themselves.
Amazing. And
Hmm.
obviously, for years and years, you just felt completely trapped within that, right? What
Actually, no.
are
Actually,
you?
no. I'm going to tell you what I felt was aware.
Mm,
So I was this really intelligent 7, 8 year old. And I was like, I knew don't eat the food. Like I literally would, I would, my mom bought me an easy bake oven and I would make my own meals because I would recognize that my brother was eating at the Mason lodges and then he would get really almost like drunk and silly and almost be like falling asleep under the tables and stuff. And so I never drank their liquor or even their Shirley Temples or their Rob Roys. I didn't drink their drinks and I didn't eat their food. I was always wide awake and I was aware that there was something really wrong and that there was something wrong with my mother and all these rich people, when they say, oh, these VIPs, don't you want to be rich and famous? I'm like, no, I come in through the back door. The VIP door is dirty. There's like everybody's chain smoking back there. And the makeup rooms are like little closets with, it's disgusting being backstage in these huge events. It's like, yeah, you come out stage, but even being on stage, you're swimming around in microphone wires and that is not my idea of a good time. And then to be groped and touched by these rich and famous people, I never got to the point where that's something I wanted in my life. I just wanted to be a mom and have my 5 sons and the white picket fence. I had all that. I raised 5 kids in Florida, got married at 18, got married. That didn't work out because I was fresh out of an abusive childhood. So I picked an alcoholic. And then at 29, I got married again, and all boys, all 5 have this rare form of Emery Dreifuss muscular dystrophy after my mother was tested, radiated, and subjected to electric shock therapy.
now I know there's based on the levels of Freemasonry, a huge percentage of Masons don't even make it into the club inside the club. where they would have an opportunity, which is horrible, to be in the situation that they are, to view yourself or the children. What separates them? Will you think that people you're performing for, maybe they're not even human? I mean, what's your thought process of what you think because you've been exposed to this?
Yeah, I think what they do is they target people with an addictive chemistry, and they can very easily bring them using hallucinogenic drugs and heavy doses of alcohol and quaaludes and things like that went back in the Bill Cosby days. They can very quickly bring them into a position where they can become controlled. So it's really easy to occlude the pineal gland with things like fluoride and strontium, barium, aluminum, and the chemtrails and all these toxins in our foods to occlude that pineal gland, which is your third eye. And by having the addictive chemistry, they're very easily brought into sociopathy. And then the next level is psychopathy. So there are different layers. And I have to disagree with you on, but agree with you at the same time, in that I was in the Freemason, I was innocent, and I was at the events, and I had no knowledge, and I did not participate in anything. And I was never subjected to satanic ritual abuse. But as
Right.
a goddaughter, I was subjected to ritual abuse where I was brought, where
Mhm.
I saw his head shoved in the mailbox and the body in the trunk of his car with my mother, and big pools of blood, and made to keep it a secret even from my brother. So that was like a ritual, a secrecy, code of silence ritual to see if I could be a mafia wife. I
Mhm.
kept that secret even from my brother. I was only 12 years old. So I was subjected to ritual abuse, but I count myself lucky. I've been counseling people who are subjected to satanic ritual abuse in these Freemason lodges, many of them, but also the other secret societies, the Knights of Templar. I attended a Jesuit college and was encouraged to join for life, thinking I was like, yes, I love Jesus. This
Mhm.
is wonderful, having no idea they were captured. But here's what happens, in my view. They keep these huge volumes of individuals that do have good hearts, they're loving families, the wives and the children know almost nothing. But even at the first level of Freemasonry, you put your brothers in the Mason lodges, your brethren, you place them above your God,
That's
above
right.
your wife, and your children. So
Right.
that's where I disagree that they're good, because they immediately take the brotherhood and they place it above for purposes of getting the right jobs, all the money, the right connections.
Mhm.
They put their God, their wives, and their children after their brethren. They agree that they will be alibis for the brethren. And I've watched this in the legal community for 27 years. I'm an actuary and I work in partnership with over 650 family law attorneys. So I'm in it up to my eyeballs, and I've helped many, many people obtain restraining orders. But what I see is this level of psychopathy where it starts with addiction, then they get you really drunk, and then they compromise you in various forms, be it with teenage girls and then with children. Um, then they get blackmail material on you, and once they know that you are really passionate about being rich and famous and working your way up through these levels and being high levels of echelon in society, then they know they've got you hooked. They get you blackmailed, and that if they can, then they get you to the level of psychopathy. And typically they do that through rituals that that are done while you're heavily medicated or drugged using hallucinogens, and then you're tortured to the point where you willingly invite entities from the lower echelon, we'll say the fallen gods, the Elohim, we'll say,
Mhm.
the fallen gods, God's fallen angels, into that realm where the new world order exists. And all satanic ritual abuse survivors, for the most part, almost all of them say that they believed that New Age and their participation in New Age was going to that was going to deliver them to these high levels of the network. And their goal was to be at that high level for the New World Order, where they would be the elite and they would be the special people, and the rest of the people are just the cattle and insects.
So, well, by the way, let me clarify. And when I mean good, I mean they do good work, which is intentional. The lower levels do a lot of good work because they hide the dark behind the white. That's the game that they play. So tons of charities. I mean, I've been recruited by them. I never accepted, but I've been recruited by them through social service things like there's Rotary, Lions Club, so on and so forth, that they use as almost the entry level in order to pull them into the Freemasonry. You know all this. I'm just kind of explaining it to the people. So uh, when when do we get to a point where people just start recognizing that the agenda is Luciferian? And that's question one. And do you think the original Masons, the founding fathers, had good intent and they were putting God before them, the brotherhood at that time, and it's been corrupted and taken like all these Satanists do? They grab something good and they turn it to bad. Do you think that's what also happened?
Absolutely. It's in the Communist Manifesto that's been our congressional record since January 10th, 1963. Infiltration. So that's what they do. They own the media. They owned Hollywood. They established Hollywood in 1921. It was established. You can even look it up. You can do the documentaries. YouTube has not hidden the fact that Hollywood was established by Polish Jews. But I actually married a Polish Jew, and his mother recently applied for dual citizenship with Poland and was declined because her bloodline comes back from the former Soviet Union, Russia. So we know that a lot of the people from World War II left Germany and immigrated into the former Soviet Union. And then they were expelled into Poland. And then they took up pretenses that they were Jewish and then came to America as fake Polish Jews, not to attack the real Polish Jews, but the fake Polish Jews came to America, established Hollywood specifically for this purpose of degrading and demoralizing humanity. So they were infiltrated, they were controlled from the get go. It was established. CIA was established, and then the CAA, Creative Artist Agency,
Mhm.
was established. Let's just look back at Hugh Hefner and Marilyn Monroe, both CIA assets.
CIA assets. Yep, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So I've counseled hundreds of victims of Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansions and the many mansions attached to them and the underground tunnel systems right around the Getty Museum. And I'm here in Newport Beach, so I'm 90 minutes from the border and in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. Two sons in North Hollywood. My brother's in Studio City for 39 years. So, yeah, crazy. But yes, they start out really, really innocently, and there are a lot of innocent people that they use philanthropically. I'm an actuary, so I'm kind of a math guru. And so I assisted in the auditing of the 501c3s and 501c4s that they all laundry money to each other, all of the governments throughout across the world. And about 4 to 6% of the money actually makes it to the people in need. And the rest is scooped off the top by the people in power. And yes, they buy people off with that money, not because they need it, but because they use it for cash flow, because they have 34 quadrillion. They're just not going to sell their castles or their mansions to pay off these blackmail fees.
Right, exactly. So it's interesting you mentioned the Getty. My friend and my wife and I just recently visited the Getty on purpose to investigate.
Hmm.
And it's so clear that there's something nefarious going on, because when you go to the Getty, let's put aside, I'm trying to talk to the normies. Let's put aside all this, the Satanism and the symbolism. Let's put aside that there's virtually only one road going up there. I mean, it's very obvious how they can lock people down there. But here's what we notice. It's one of the most extravagant when it comes to how much money and what they've created there. Is they've had to spend an absolute fortune, yet the art there is some of the worst on the planet. It's it's like third, fourth tier artwork, right? It doesn't belong in any museum. It's which just tells me.
But that's our thought process, that the
Mhm,
violence and the assassinations are perfectly okay. Whereas we need to get to the point where world peace is what we all seek to
mhm.
establish, not a constant state of war.
So I'm gonna say three statements. I want to see if you're familiar with any of them. Ron Burkle, Bill Clinton, and the Green Acre Mansion in Beverly Hills. Any of those trigger anything?
Yeah, the last two, the Green Acres Mansion and you have to realize that they picked Donald Trump because he was in the club. But Donald Trump, they never could get blackmail on him because even though he was a womanizer, he never went for the underage girls and he didn't drink alcohol.
Hmm.
So that's probably why he was the only last man standing that was in the club and that was rubbing elbows with all of the Satanists and the evildoers that were the billionaires who never used their money to really create to solve world hunger and,
By the way, $7 billion solves world hunger in 1 year.
right.
I've done a study on it. It takes $1,000 to pay for all the food for one person for 1 year. That's
Yeah.
it. 7 billion. It's that easy. So that they could solve world hunger overnight if they wanted to. I'm sorry, just a little portion of what they sent to Ukraine would have taken care of that.
Yeah. Or one billionaire, just one
Yeah,
billionaire, like,
exactly. Well, yeah, said that forever. One billionaire
homelessness.
would do it.
And that was an issue because I started being a singer in a mega church when my kids were infants. In fact, when I left there when my youngest baby, who's now 26, because they were supposed to be non-denominational, and I found out that they had a background in the deep Southern Baptists, and so they were hiding a lot of their origins and things like that. But the interesting thing about it was that I followed into the world of praise and worship, which still sticks with me today and saves my sanity, quite frankly. But where was I going with this? You asked me a question specifically. I
Well,
lost it.
I wanted to talk about Green Acres
Okay, the
specifically.
Green Acres. There's a song that Donald Trump sang on Green Acres.
Oh,
If you
really?
look it up, yeah, you can look it up.
I didn't know
Donald
that.
Trump, Green Acres. He was on their show. Oh, and Hee Haw Junction. My mom was on that show with the Tootsie Sisters and stuff like that. So all of Hollywood, all the entertainment is involved. They're part of it.
So for people that don't understand the Green Acres I'm talking about, there's a mansion in Beverly Hills that they named the property Green Acres, literally right next to Madonna's old house. And I used to work for the largest commercial plumbing company in California. My friend and I were the top guys, and we were the troubleshooters. So what happened is we did all the Alpha Betas, the Ralphs, the Vaughns, and all that stuff. And Ron Burkle owned those. He was buying the Green Acre Mansion. Now, the reason why he wanted to buy the Green Acre Mansion is because he was just a grocery store guy with a lot of money, but he wanted to be a producer in Hollywood, right? And he wanted to rub elbows. So what he found out is he found out they had the largest quote unquote charity event for Hollywood every single year at that mansion. So what he proposed is when he went to buy it, he also guaranteed that he would continue to do the event. That was his weaselly way to get in there. He became really good friends with Bill Clinton. Now, the reason why it connects to me and I wanted to ask you about this is because what happened is, so Ron Burkle specifically said, I want Lewis and his buddy, I'm not going to name him because I don't want to expose him, to come troubleshoot all the issues. And really what I want to do is I want to drive down the price. So he wanted us to find all the plumbing issues. So they had high security there. We found out they had secret entrances, literally like on TV where there's a bunch of bushes. They move the bushes on a fence, and the next thing you know, you're driving in the back of the lot.
Right.
Well, the reason why we found these is because the security would follow us all over the place. And finally, I called Mr. Burkle and I said, "Dude, these guys are costing you a fortune because they're on our tail all the time. If you don't trust us here, why don't we just leave?" I knew what we were doing, right? Because we wanted to go inspect everything. So he goes, "Okay, let them go." So then we had free reign of the place for 2 weeks. We saw some weird stuff, Casey. They have had a mini house in there for children, literally with working seats and toilets that were the size of a child. We had to crawl in there in order to inspect the plumbing. They had a full carousel like you would see at Santa Monica Pier, full size on the property. And then we walked into this beautiful rotunda library. And then that's when it got really weird, is because I noticed, I was telling my friend, I go, "Hey, I bet you one of these bookshelves open up. Like, let's pull a book and just do this." And he's like, "Ah, you're crazy." And then I saw a seam between two bookshelves, and I pushed on it, and it clicked open. Literally clicked open. There's a door behind it. We went down, of course, downstairs into the catacombs, and it smelled like cedar like you've never believed before, which at the
Wine
time,
cellars.
yeah, well, at the time we were told it was for the shoes, keep the moths out of the shoes. And it was a hallway. It's like at least 60 feet of cedar shelves on both sides. Now I understand that cedar is also to you know so we went all into these interesting rooms. And anyways, long story short, at the end, there was a room with a different type of lock on it that we couldn't go through. But these were like catacombs. And we found out later that it seems like that hooked directly underground to the Playboy Mansion.
Yep.
So here's what I found out years later is I was doing work at somebody's house. I owned a construction company at the time. Definitely won't say her name, but her ex-husband was somebody extraordinarily famous. She became friends with Burkle's wife, right? And what happens is every time they would do that charity once a year, right? Who would show up? Bill Clinton would show up, and then Bill Clinton would tell everybody that he's heading off to Martha's Vineyard or Camp David or something like that. He would stay there for another week, sometimes 2 weeks. His Secret Service A team would leave, his Secret Service B team would come in, right? And then all the teenage girls and probably boys, but all the teenage girls would flood in, and they would send the two women away on these exotic vacations so they could be nowhere near there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is divine because God just put me in these weird spots and all this information just came together. And then I just thought about it because then when you told me the Getty connects to the Playboy Mansion, I'm like, wow, it's like a triangle. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's my big regret is they um, they got me to invite my 13-year-old best friend when I was 13 to do a song and dance routine and attend one of these ritzy parties, and she ended up getting gang raped.
Ugh.
So I went to look for her, and she was in an underground swimming pool, and there were tunnel systems all over to all of the surrounding Hollywood Hills. Okay, they're
Mhm.
hills for a reason. That's why they built those houses in the hills. They're all connected. And so she just disappeared. So I went and checked on her, and she was with this really nice guy, or a couple of guys, and she seemed happy and well taken care of, and they weren't creepy looking. So I left and I went and continued to entertain people because that was my job to go around these parties and make sure everybody was happy. And I didn't drink; I was just watching everybody get wasted. And yeah,
Looking.
yeah,
Right. And they're just normal looking people. Some are very, very well put together guys, and they're just and women, by the way. And
yeah.
it's just absolutely creepy. So, what's on your agenda in the next few months, years? What are your goals and ambitions?
Well, I have been a lot of my survivors. Is my sound still good? Because I think
Yeah,
okay,
great.
okay.
You're doing great.
A lot of my survivors have been reported getting reaccessed and from their training, like they get all of their multiple personalities. My mom, by the way, was multiple personality diagnosed, and so I was always managing her multiple personalities as a child.
Oh,
Yeah. So I work with a lot of. I have CIA assassins who are still trying to hang on to their littles. Like as they try to reintegrate, they're still trying to hang on to their littles because the littles are the children that dissociated themselves in the trauma to protect themselves. But they also became like anyone would. If you corner a child, they're going to scratch their way out of it. So they don't want to give these littles up because that's where their anger is, and they feel like they need to hang on to that. And so I just because I know this is a spiritual warfare, I recently got rebaptized at Baptized California. I went to Jesus 24. I parked myself at the feet of Jesus because one thing I know is that the demonic entities and the people that have invited them in, they are terrified of the name Jesus, Yeshua. Whereas the sociopaths and the psychopaths, they're not afraid of the name of Jesus, and they will still perpetrate all manner of harm, which is why a lot of the now we're through this because so many of them have reported that they started out with the aliens doing experiments on them, and then if they ever stopped cooperating, all of a sudden a demon walks in. A person with a goat head that's obviously not really in the room. They've got like they're see-through, so they're multidimensional. So And they very quickly cooperate because the demons are obviously the bosses of these hybrid creatures that people perceive as aliens. And so, knowing that it's a spiritual war, I have just that's what I've been doing. That's what's on my agenda for the next 2 months is to spread that news because the agenda of the Anunnaki actually created us. They're going to do a fake alien invasion and say, oh, the Anunnaki are our gods. And so I'm trying to get ahead of that and be spiritually prepared because I deal with Muslims, Jews, for every religious background. I have absolutely a great love for them. And that's why I follow the teachings of Christ, because he said no to no one and was open with God's love to everyone. And so that is my mission, and to follow wherever God leads me and to use my voice where possible, and to both speak and to sing, to glorify God and to bring people back into a world where we all stand against the real enemy, which are the demons.
No, that's beautiful and appreciated. Hey, real quick, guess what? We're doing the Unity tour. I know you may have heard of it. I'm going to show a quick spot on this, and then I'll ask you one question, and then we'll be all righty. And I know you're going to be at a couple events. Is that right? Do your best.
Yes, so I'm driving down to San Diego and for the 12th, and then I'll be showing up at the Anaheim one too as well. I'll be stalking you as much as I
I
can.
love it. I love it. We're going to be doing a convoy. So, well, it's awesome to have you here. I have one more question because you started the show with this name.
Remember, the Geneva Bible specified in Ephesians 6:10 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and worldly governors. And then King James had worldly governors taken out because they didn't want you to know that the governors are the ones we're wrestling against.
Yep. Beautifully said. And let's end it on that. I can't wait to see you in San Diego and Anaheim. Appreciate you so much. And folks, God bless you. Just know that God has already won this for us, but we need to do the work to reap the harvest. So it's just time to ante up and kick in. See you guys. Good night.